Welcome to the video demonstration of Blahtech supply-demand indicator. We've named it Blahtech supply-demand, but it is much more than that. It has three major functions: enhanced supply-demand, a multi-timeframe trend indicator, and a confirmed swing detector. Looking at supply-demand, we find that it's quite different from standard offerings. Not only can it detect advanced levels like consolidations and drop-based drop formations, but it also locates the higher odds levels using its built-in strength engine. This engine analyzes each zone in real time, taking account of 7 criteria, such as profit margin, violence of move, retouches, and so on. The strongest zones are then highlighted on the chart, enabling us to focus on the higher probability trades. The trend indicator also adopts a unique approach. It analyzes historical levels across multiple timeframes to determine whether supplies or demands are currently in force. Once a significant level has been broken, the trend will change. This gives a more consistent view of trend rather than being fooled by every minor change or a dead cat bounce. Thirdly, we have the confirmed swing detector. To maximize profitability, you must endeavor to buy low and sell high. Too many traders ignore this rule and get punished by the market as a consequence. The Blahtech swing detector was developed as a solution to this problem. It determines the extreme points of recent price movements and displays them as pink lines on the chart, which you can see here. We then divide this price range into 4 equal regions. Of particular interest are the prices at the borders of the upper and lower quartiles. We call them quartile points, or QPoints for short. On the chart, you will find these threshold prices marked as Q high and Q low. These Q points represent the prices at which it is safest to trade. As a general rule, the trader should wait for the prices at the extremes of swings rather than taking setups in between. Or as our mascot Bob the chameleon would say, don't diddle in the middle. Right, so let's turn our attention to the indicator features. First things first, let's drag the indicator on the chart. You'll be greeted by Bob, the ambush predator, which is our logo. Bob is a very patient trader, and we should all strive to be like him. SD stands for supply-demand, obviously. Now, if I click on inputs, there are lots and lots of customizable parameters. I won't be going through every single one here. If you do wish to know what each of these does, you'll find a download link to a file in the comments section. Alternatively, on our website as well, which is www.blahtech.co.uk/products. The next thing I'm going to do is bring up the hotkeys map by pressing letter H on my keyboard. Pressing H again will make it disappear like that. And now I'll go through each of these. Letter C clears all objects related to the Blahtech supply-demand indicator from the chart temporarily. If you have any other objects that you've drawn on, such as horizontal lines or even some texts like that, these will stay on the chart. So only the objects pertaining to the Blahtech indicator will get cleared. If you want them back, you press C again. By the way, if you own another Blahtech indicator such as market profile or daily range, letter C will temporarily clear those as well. Next is letter R for reset. This key is in case you either press something you didn't mean to press or you notice some weird stuff going on like this. Just press R and the indicator will reset to its normal functionality. Next up is letter Q for QPoints. I explained what these do in the intro. Bear in mind that QPoints will only be available if the conditions for QPoints exist. This hotkey has a cycle or a loop. If I press it multiple times, if you notice here, the QPoints start changing time frames. Okay? So for example, if I go down to the 30-minute chart and start changing it, it loops through the different time frames. This is really useful as it can show you where you are in a longer term swing without changing the time frame of the chart. And please also know that QPoints will only exist if there have been recent swings. For example, when the price of an instrument busts the top, there won't be any QPoints displayed until the price swings back down again. Next up is the summary. The summary panel shows the overall status of the indicator. Not only is it the home of our trend indicator, but it also shows QPoints and active supply-demand zones across 4 time frames. Pressing the S key once brings up a compact box to the left, as you can see here. Pressing S again shows the larger version. And as you can see, it has 4 columns. First column, time frame. This shows us which time frames are being monitored. If I change the time frame to 4 hours, we now have 4 hours daily, weekly, and monthly chart monitored. Lower time frames, such as M30 and below, are configured to skip a time frame in between. For example, here on M30 we have M30, then we jump to H4, so it's skipping the H1 time frame. This is because M30 and H1 pretty much give similar information. And same thing with the 15 minutes and also with the M5 chart. If I go to higher time frames, it's even possible to see quarterly and yearly trends and zones if such information is available, and in this case it is. Okay, second column is the trend column. For each monitored time frame, you can see at a glance which trend that time frame is in. So again, you don't have to keep jumping through various time frames. This gives you that information quickly. The trend heading is important because it shows the overall trend, which we should use for our setups. Column number 3 is the QPoints column. It will highlight if the price drops into a QPoint and will display high or low. So if I quickly kick off our backtest mode and I go somewhere around this area, you will see, so if you watch this particular row in a QPoint section there, if I click there, the indicator lights up a pink cell to let you know that there could be a selling opportunity. And interestingly enough, price moved downwards from there. Column number 4 is the supply-demand column, sub-dem. It highlights if the current price is within a supply or demand zone on each of the time frames. Now, most of the time, these will be gray because the majority of the supplies and demands will be weak. The whole point of supply and demand is to find only the most probable zones, the strongest zones that institutions might find attractive for their own large positions. Now, once the zone is strong and is with a primary trend, these cells will light up to let you know that a high probability setup is potentially available. Now, you still have to use your own analysis to determine if you're willing to take the trade. An interesting thing happened fairly recently. If I go back to this euro-dollar chart on a 30-minute period, and if we go back to December the 3rd, if you can see here, and it was December the 3rd, 2015, there was a massive shakeout of trapped shorts. And if I go back in time with my supply and demand backtest mode, our indicator was showing that no strong zones were available until much, much higher up. And look where the price stopped. I mean, it's quite remarkable. Not only did it get it correct, but you would have easily gotten an over sort of 10-to-1 risk-reward trade from there. I am constantly amazed at how this indicator picks stuff up. I mean, I as a human can see these levels, but only with a lot more work. Okay, moving on. Letter D for detection. This is another unique feature to the Blahtech supply-demand indicator. Not only does it detect the standard peak levels, but it can also detect consolidations, drop-based drops, or rally-based rallies. For those of you familiar with supply-demand, you're probably already well acquainted with the importance of consolidations, aka bases. Bases, when they happen during active trading hours, represent an agreement in price, and they suggest that the price is having issues going further up or down. So let's examine the US dollar weekly chart with this Blahtech indicator configured to only detect the traditional peak levels. Looking closer, the human eye can spot some hidden levels that sort of formed in around December 2014, and then again here in January 2015. So now if I hit the D key once, we change the setting to peaks plus consolidations detection. And sure enough, the extra levels are now shown. Now if I go back in time, again with our backtest mode, to this January 2015, this January 2015 level is of particular interest because it was the only available strong level that resulted in a more than 4-to-1 risk-reward reaction in May 2015. Okay, so these levels are incredibly significant. Pressing the letter D a second time will add drop-based drops and rally-based rallies. And sure enough, you see this extra little rally-based rally zone appear somewhere around August 2014. So let's just quickly cycle through these three modes a couple of times. So this is standard peak detection, this is peaks plus consolidations, and finally rally-based rallies and drop-based drops detection. Next hotkey is O for overlaps. By default, supply and demand is configured to only show clean, uncongested zones. However, once the zone is tested, frequently you will have additional overlapping zones that result from a reaction with the original clean zone. I used to only use my eyes to find these overlapping zones, but now you don't have to because we've added this feature to reveal additional reactionary areas. And there are 3 overlap modes, which you'll get by pressing letter O multiple times. This default is no overlaps. If you press it once, you get partial overlaps, and press for the second time to get full overlaps. Now we have letter I. Letter I is for info. It will display various information in text format, including the score of the zone, but in order, this is how the info comes up. This first number is the size of the zone. The second number is the lot size that would be necessary to trade the zone, which is configurable as a percentage of your account balance. So for example, if you set this to 0.5%, it will calculate the lot size you'll need for that risk. Then we have the score of the zone. Maximum score is 8. And then after that, we have a whole bunch of numbers representing the breakdown of the scoring system. And this last number is the average bar size. If you then press I again, you'll get some additional info, like the date when the level was created, as well as the time when it was created. After this, the pattern starts to loop around again. I will also draw your attention to this customizable text where it says lots in brackets. It's kind of interspersed with the variables, but you can't change that text. So if I go to inputs and I change this here, for example, if I bring up the info again, you will see that now I have my text there. So you can basically put any text that you want in there for your own convenience. Next up is letter P for prices. So if I press P once, you get the prices of levels and the QPoints displayed. Press it again and the prices will get bigger for those of you with less than perfect eyesight, or if you're sitting far away from your screens, this is a very helpful feature. Moving on to letter U. U simply moves the info text to the left. Sometimes you may want to have your own textual analysis to the right, over in this section. And this way you can move the info to the left inside the zones. Pressing U again puts it back in its original place. Next up is letter F. It simply flips the price text from foreground to background. Sometimes if you have like overlapping prices, such as here, and you can't really see the text, you can press F and you will be able to see the other price. Next is letter W. Letter W stands for with trend. Pretty simple, this one. This hotkey will exclude any zones that are against the trend. So here we have a strong zone, but it is against the trend. Pressing letter W will actually take it out. This key exists because of a presumption that in an uptrend, all supplies will eventually break down, and in a downtrend, all demands will eventually break down. So really, unless you have other reasons to go into a counter-trend trade, you shouldn't blindly kick off trades just because there's a strong zone. Now we have letter X, another easy one. It just extends the zones by 1 bar. The reason why we have this is that if you're on a aligned mode for the supply and demand zones, and you have a user who has their chart on background, which is a setting in chart properties. So if you see here, most people have this unticked. So when I put chart on foreground, that is not an issue because then you get the wicks on the foreground, it's not a problem. However, if your setting is like that and you are using the Blahtech supply and demand indicator in line mode, then it'll be very difficult to see the wicks. As you can see here, it's disappeared. So what we've done, we've added the X key to extend the zones by 1 bar so that these wicks become fully visible. Okay, coming up now is the Blahtech flagship feature. Letter B for backtest mode directly on the chart. You no longer need to spend hours in various other backtesting programs because now you can just press B and turn on the backtest mode. So here you'll notice as I start to click through the chart, we can see how zones reacted in the past. We can also show these zones in real time. First, I press Control button and I hold it down, and then I drag the mouse without pressing any mouse buttons. So Control and drag. So you drag it along the chart and you can quickly go through the areas and test your theories and strategies very quickly. I love the backtest mode. It's absolutely awesome. I think some of you who have been trading supply and demand for a while might remember painstakingly backtesting for hours and hours or even days on end with suboptimal software. When backtest mode was delivered, I was so excited, and it has proven as an incredibly useful feature to me and to other traders. To switch the backtest mode off, you click B again. Okay, next up are the numbers 1, 2, and 3. Another super cool feature of Blahtech supply and demand indicator is that it's able to display zones from multiple time frames on one chart. What do I mean by that? Well, let's say I'm trading intraday, and here, for example, I am on a 30-minute chart, but I also want to see where my nearest 4-hour zones are. So if I press number 2, you'll notice the chart will change to display the current time frame as these dashed lines. So all of the dashed lines are now the current 30-minute time frame. But it's also telling me where the nearest 4-hour zones are. If you see these thick lines, those zones represent your 4-hour chart. So that's your second time frame. Now if I go ahead and I press number 3, suddenly we have the shaded areas, which represent the third time frame, which is the highest time frame of all 3. So numbers 1, 2, and 3 are implemented as on-off switches corresponding to the current, medium, and higher time frame, respectively. So once again, another feature that makes supply and demand so much easier. I used to have to manually draw these for years before I would then go down to lower time frames, just so that I'm aware of all the medium and higher time frame zones. So now you don't have to do that anymore because of Blahtech supply and demand indicator. What's quite interesting about this indicator is that although Metatrader 4 has the monthly chart as the highest available time frame, Blahtech supply and demand can also show you the zones on quarterly and yearly levels. So for example, if I look at the monthly chart on Eurodollar and I press number 2 for my second time frame, this is now showing me the quarterly levels. And then if I press number 3 for my third time frame, we get the yearly levels. Our software architect wanted to add this feature for those of you who like to look at long-term levels, for example, for longer-term investments. And finally, letter Z, which changes the solo time frame style. So if I go ahead and switch off the second and third time frame, and I only leave the first one, if I press letter Z, you'll see that if you don't like the look of these solid zones, you can easily change them to a line style. The Z key will then loop between the two. Okay, so now for the end of the demo, I just want to quickly show you that many of the features are customizable via the input parameters. Take the time frames, for example. I like to have 30 minutes, 4-hour, daily, and weekly for my trend and QPoint summary. But you might want to set it to something different. It's very flexible like that. So you have the solid time frame 1, time frame 2, time frame 3. You can even control the behavior of the trend, QPoints, and strength engine if you need to. I'm not going to go through all of these individually because there are way too many of them for this video, but you can find a file in the comment section of the Blahtech supply demand MQL5 page that explains all these parameters in more detail. And with that, I would like to conclude the presentation. I hope we've managed to ease the troubles of the supply and demand traders by implementing some very innovative, never-before-seen features that were long overdue for the Metatrader platform. So please go ahead, download the demo, try it out, and I promise you it will quickly become a staple in your trading. Thanks for watching and have a good day.